What happens when you throw vampires, apocalypse, time travel, and Souls-like combat into a blender? Code Vein 2, that's what happens. And let me tell you right off the bat, this game is far more ambitious than anyone expected. Some will call it anime Dark Souls, others anime Elden Ring, but the truth is that Code Vein 2 has such a distinct personality that it deserves to be judged on its own merits. So buckle up, because we're about to dissect this vampiric feast. Let's start with what matters most, the plot. And yes, I know that in Souls-likes the story is usually hidden in item descriptions and cryptic dialogue, but Code Vein 2 says to hell with that and throws a complex narrative right in your face, combining vampires, apocalypse, and time travel. Sounds complicated? Because it is. The premise is deliciously twisted. The world is on the brink of a double apocalypse because one wasn't enough apparently, and the only way to save it is to travel 100 years into the past to meet 5 legendary heroes, earn their trust, and then return to the present to kill them. Yes, you read that right. It's basically speed dating followed by premeditated murder. Your character is a Revenant hunter who died in combat, but a girl named Lou revives you by literally giving you half of her glowing golden heart. Nothing subtle here. Lou has the power to travel through time, which is convenient for the plot and devastating for your emotions because you'll spend hours meeting these heroes of the past, forming genuine bonds with them, only to face their corrupted versions in the present. And here's what's brilliant. The game doesn't beat around the bush regarding the moral implications of altering time. Should you save your new friends from the past, even if it means risking or destroying your current timeline? It's heavy, and the game makes you feel the weight of those decisions. If the first Code Vein was the anime answer to Dark Souls, then Code Vein 2 is clearly their attempt at making Elden Ring. The game drops you into a vast open world that you can explore with relative freedom after overcoming the annoying initial restrictions that prevent you from accessing certain areas until you progress in the story. But here comes the twist. It's not just one open world, it's 2. Thanks to time travel, you explore the same geography in 2 different eras, the devastated present and the past from 100 years ago. Sounds incredible on paper, right? Well, in practice, it's complicated. The problem is that both eras are disappointingly similar. We're talking about a 100-year difference, and yet the destroyed buildings are in exactly the same place. The overturned cars haven't moved an inch, and even the enemies are standing in the same positions. Sometimes you have to pause the game to check which era you're in because visually it's almost identical. It's a wasted opportunity of epic proportions. Still, you have to acknowledge that when the game decides to change something between eras for key narrative moments, those moments shine. Finding an area sealed in one era only to discover its secret in another is genuinely exciting. The problem is, these moments are far too scarce. Let's talk about the dungeons. On one hand, there's impressive visual variety, maximum security prisons, abandoned amusement parks, buildings submerged underwater with waves reflecting on the walls. When Code Vein 2 tries aesthetically, the results are spectacular. The sunken city in particular is a visual delight. But for every inspired dungeon, there are 3 more that are water treatment plants, electric substations, generic industrial facilities, basically all the boring real-world locations we try to avoid in actual life. And they look so similar to each other that it's easy to get lost simply because you're confusing one with another in your memory. The compact size of the dungeons is a plus. You never have to wait long to see what's next. The bad news is, what's next is often more of the same. The game recycles enemies with an alarming frequency, and what's worse, it recycles bosses. Imagine the excitement of Dark Souls when you cross the fog and see a completely new and impressive boss. Now imagine crossing that fog and seeing the same boss you've already fought a dozen times, only now with more health. The first time you fight a golden mech with a cat figurine living inside is surreal and cool. The 12th time, not so much. This is where Code Vein 2 really shines. Combat has all the classic Souls-like elements: invincibility dodges, measured attacks, limited stamina, and brutal bosses that will turn you into a human pretzel. But it also has something special. It's much more accessible than your average Dark Souls or Elden Ring. The game leans heavily towards a hack-and-slash style rather than pure tactical methodology. With a generous RPG leveling system and fast, forgiving battles, even less skilled players at perfect timing can progress. You can mash the light attack button and emerge victorious against most enemies. Small mutant dog, mash until it dies. Giant skeleton centipede grafted to a rotting masked corpse, mash until it super dies. Sure, there are heavy attacks, specials, and unique life-draining abilities called jails, but the reality is you can ignore much of the complexity if you just want to advance. For those who do want to dig deeper, there are tons of customization, weapons with different elemental styles, stat-boosting equipment, and a variety of builds that feel noticeably different in combat. One of the most interesting innovations is the companion system. You always have an NPC fighting by your side, and here's the genius: they're invincible. Not so powerful that they'll do the work for you, but useful enough to draw enemy attention while you sneak behind for a treacherous backstab. The resurrection system is brilliant. If you die, your companion automatically revives you, but temporarily disappears. Die again before they return and game over for real. Additionally, each death reduces your resurrection health and increases the wait time for your companion to return. This creates incredibly tense moments where you're desperately rolling around the boss arena, begging for your companion to come back and take the beating for you. You can also assimilate your companion, absorbing them into your body to gain additional stat buffs, though you lose their active help in the field. It's an interesting balance between having combat support and powering up your own abilities. Special attacks and jail abilities are where Code Vein 2 really shines. You can throw your weapon and make it spin in place like a floating death tornado, or summon 2 swords that orbit your opponent, taking occasional breaks from spinning to stab them in the face, or conjure a swarm of golden bats that peck at your enemy and periodically feed you Ichor, the game's magical resource. Jails aren't just visually spectacular, they're mechanically important. To regenerate Ichor and use your special attacks, you need to drain blood from enemies using jails. The more damage you inflict first with your main weapon, the more blood a successful jail attack extracts. This creates a furious combat rhythm where you're constantly rewarded for maintaining the offensive. There's an impressive variety of jails: spikes that sprout from the floor at a distance, a 2-headed wolf whose ferocious jaws rip blood from bodies, or a medium-range scorpion tail that knocks down enemies. Finding the right combination between your weapon, your special attacks, and your jails is deeply satisfying. The character progression system is extensive to the point of being overwhelming at first. You have blood codes, basically classes that dictate your base stats, boosters, additional upgrades, bequeathed Forme weapons, offensive, defensive, and support Forme abilities, and more. Blood codes are particularly interesting because you obtain them by meeting and interacting with main characters. Noah, a character you meet early, uses dual swords and has an agile combat style, so his blood code gives you strength and dexterity stats. Lou, on the other hand, focuses on magic and status effects, giving you mind and intelligence boosts. You can even master these codes to unlock more powerful versions. Weapons range from short and fast to large and heavy, with interesting ranged hybrids like bayonet-equipped rifles and floating energy blades. Each weapon can be equipped with up to 4 unique Forme abilities, and experimenting with their properties to find the perfect attack loop is addictive. The only thing that doesn't quite convince are the bequeathed Forme weapons. Early in the game, they do very little damage or have too much wind-up and recovery time, so they're not worth the resource drain or risk. Forme shields, on the other hand, are great. Some are standard shields for blocking, others can only be used for parries, and one particularly satisfying one gives you an invincible spirit dash that consumes Ichor but feels incredibly good. I have to stop here to talk about the character creator, because it is without exaggeration one of the best I've ever seen. This game lets you choose custom nail designs with specific colors. You can curl your character's hair at specific angles and lengths. You can enable, disable, and combine layers and pieces from different outfits to create your own look. One critic admitted to spending as much time creating their character as playing through the entire first section of the game. And honestly, I completely understand. The temptation to take screenshots with photo mode and all the available poses and dances is real. The open world is compact and manageable, which is refreshing. Exploring is genuinely fun, with enough opacity in the map that figuring out how to reach certain areas is a satisfying puzzle in itself. The rewards for exploring are worth it, especially the health upgrades essential for beating the toughest bosses. Then there's the motorcycle. It's your main means of transportation in the open world, and it's peculiar. It's a bit clunky to handle, but it can jump, deploy wings, and glide in the air. Once you get the hang of it, it allows for cool jumps and shortcuts through the world. It's weird, but functional and eventually fun. The real problem is performance. Despite being on PS5, the game suffers notable frame rate drops in both quality and performance modes, especially in open areas. Textures have the bad habit of visibly loading during dramatic moments, and clothing clipping is frequent, with parts of characters or accessories going through fabrics, weapons, and other surfaces regularly, even in cutscenes. Let's talk about the goth and sexy elephant in the room. Code Vein 2's aesthetic is shamelessly anime, overtly horny, and absolutely unapologetic.
All the characters look like they're headed to a goth kink fashion show, and that's just how it is. To the game's credit, this applies to both men and women with fair equity. What's important is that beneath those exaggerated looks, the characters often have much more substance if you give them time. The story takes its characters seriously, and if you can get past the initial "this is very anime" factor, you'll find genuinely emotive narratives and characters worth caring about. Visually, when the game wants to impress, it really does. The sunken city is an early highlight, with wave reflections dancing on walls and a haunting atmosphere. The problem is inconsistency. For every visually striking area, there are several generic and forgettable ones. Code Vein 2's music is fantastic when it decides to appear. The soundtrack and boss fights and cutscenes is excellent, with swirling romantic strings and delicate piano melodies that can make you feel something even when the writing doesn't quite connect. The problem is the game uses music very sparingly. Inside dungeons outside of boss fights, it makes sense to keep silence for atmosphere, but the open world and base zones are eerily quiet. A bit more auditory ambience would have helped maintain the mood while traveling, especially since when music does appear in Code Vein 2, it's generally fantastic. Here's the truth. Code Vein 2 is a deeply flawed game with moments of genuine brilliance. If you can tolerate technical jank, excessive content recycling, and a steep learning curve for its systems, you'll find a unique Souls-like with a surprisingly emotive story and satisfying combat system. The game has personality. It shoots beyond the simple Souls-like tag and never compromises its unique vision, however exaggerated in anime it may be. The character creator alone is worth the price of admission for some. The character building system offers massive depth, and when combat clicks, especially against challenging bosses, the feeling is glorious. But it's also a game that constantly reminds you of its limitations. Technical performance struggles, content is recycled to exhaustion, dungeons lack the imagination that the time travel concept promises, and the open world, while beautiful in places, doesn't adequately capitalize on its dual-era gimmick. Code Vein 2 is more ambitious than its predecessor in almost every way. It launches toward an open-world design, adds time travel, massively expands combat systems, and tells a story that genuinely tries to make you feel something. Sometimes it triumphs spectacularly, other times it stumbles over its own ambition. With ratings ranging from 69 to 90 depending on the critic, it's clear this is a divisive game. Some will see the wasted potential and technical problems as fatal flaws. Others will look past the jank and see a unique character progression ecosystem and an emotionally resonant narrative. If you loved the first Code Vein, this is more of what you loved, but bigger and with more systems. If Souls-likes generally frustrate you, Code Vein 2's accessibility might be your entry point. If you just want the most polished and refined Souls-like possible, you should probably stick to Elden Ring. But if you want something different, something with its own personality, something that tries new things even if it doesn't always succeed, Code Vein 2 deserves your attention. It's an imperfect, sanguine feast, but for those hungry for the right kind of experience, it might be exactly what you're looking for. Personal rating, 7.5 out of 10. An ambitious Souls-like with an emotive story and satisfying combat that's held back by technical problems and repetitive design. Worth it for genre fans willing to forgive its flaws.